House of the Dragon Season 2, Episode 8 is called The Queen Who Ever Was. I guess the Queen is Rhaenyra. Is this the show finally coming down and saying this is the side that they're supporting? I'm not sure. Am I going to go on some crazy rant about how the show writers are clearly biased? Perhaps the show writers mean that Alicent's actions in the episode show that she's the rightful leader of the Green faction? No, let's park that last one. That's too crazy, even for how some of the characters get treated on this show. We start off in Essos, where Tywin Lannister's family name is proving more of a hindrance than a help in his negotiations with the Triarchy. In return for donating their ships to break the blockade on King's Landing, they want 100 gold dragons for every man in their fleet, and they want the Stepstones, which the Westerosi have held since Daemon and Corlys scoured them around 20 years ago. They can sense that Tywin Lannister is desperate and take the chance to personally humiliate him, along with extracting political and military concessions. He also has to convince the commander of their fleet, Admiral Lohar, that he personally is worth following. Even a few months after the end of the show, I'm not really sure whether I like Admiral Lohar or whether the character is a bit of a Pirates of the Caribbean caricature. Lohar gets Tywin's name wrong deliberately. The mild-mannered Lannister is clearly in for a bit more rough behaviour. Humiliation feels like a running theme for the Greens. For Aemond, who pulled out of the battle at Dragonstone at the end of the last episode, his feeling of humiliation results in him burning the village of Sharp Point for what seems to be no obvious reason. For King Aegon II, humiliation comes in the form of Larys Strong's suggestions that it's time to leave King's Landing. "I am the king," Aegon says, a running joke for the franchise at this point. "Why must I leave?" Larys makes the point that physical danger is Aegon's future, basically from all sides. The immediate problem is his younger brother, but even if Aemond could be dealt with internally, the Blacks have 3 new dragons. The best way of dealing with 3 new dragons is, unfortunately, Aemond and Vhagar. Larys's plan is to escape Westeros entirely, go and live in Braavos on the strong family money, and come back to be, I guess, King of the Ashes. Aegon gets a bit racist about the Braavosi and their alleged deep love of farm animals. He engages in a bit more self-pity about his lack of dragon and lack of manhood. In the long run, though, he accepts the suggestion, and in a nice callback to the early part of the season, he starts fantasizing about what history will call him. Aegon the Victorious, the Peacemaker, the Rebuilder. But this is clearly done not completely seriously, as one of his choices is Rhaenyra's former moniker of Aegon the Realm's Delight. Once Aemond returns to the Red Keep, he decides that A, it's finally time to do something about the apparently unfettered traffic between King's Landing and Dragonstone, and B, it's also time for his sister Helaena to start riding her dragon. Helaena is not up for it. She doesn't want to kill anyone. Aemond's fury, she says, is just fury at his own humiliation. Both Helaena and Alicent are disgusted at what he's done to Sharp Point. Aemond presses the point again with Helaena later in the episode, but she's still not going to do it, even when he threatens her. She gives him the clearest prophecy that she's given anyone in the series so far. Their big brother Aegon will sit on a wooden throne, and Aemond will be swallowed up by the God's Eye. It seems like Helaena is basically a Cassandra, able to tell the future. But how about the second part of the Cassandra? Will she be ignored? It's not clear in the context of the episode whether Aemond actually believes her, but Helaena has basically been the last sympathetic family member. This is the severing of Aemond's last functional relationship with his family, except perhaps for his grandfather, the still absent Otto Hightower. So the Greens in King's Landing are basically a completely atomized faction. Criston Cole, at the head of the Green Army, on the way to Harrenhal, is feeling similarly lonely and hopeless. Somehow, Gwaine Hightower has found out what's going on between Cole and his sister. Cole doesn't really care about this, but not in an arrogant, swaggering way, like Season 1 Cole might have acted. Gawain is really angry. Cole's completely unbothered response is rooted in his understanding of the realpolitik of the situation. While Gawain frames the problem in terms of the Kingsguard oath of celibacy, Cole's response is that nothing will happen to him because the damage to the Hightower's reputation will just be too great. Fabian Frankel has some of the best lines in the series, and that's true again here. Honor is a mist that melts in the morning. The dragons dance, and men are like dust under their feet. Like he did in the aftermath of Rook's Rest, Cole takes comfort in cleaning his sword as he discusses just why his situation is completely unrepairable. As nice as his dialogue has been, and as well as the actor delivers it, I hope the character gets a bit more development before his ultimate end, assuming that things go the same way as in the books. Back over in Essos, Tywin Lannister is getting humiliated a bit more, wrestling in the mud with Admiral Lohar, before the script allows him to get the fleet he needs, plus an offer to sleep with Admiral Lohar's wives. I'm not really opposed to a bit of comedy, but at the moment, Admiral Lohar feels like one of those characters that could really go either way. Are they going to be like Salvador San in Game of Thrones, or are they going to be like Euron Greyjoy in Game of Thrones? I guess I'll keep my mind open until season 3. Let's move over to the Blacks. Over in the Vale, Rhaena Targaryen is still running around fields by herself. Her storyline has been so insubstantial in the last few episodes that I'll save my comments about her for my season review. The main Black storyline begins in Dragonstone. Ulf is very much being Ulf. I may never eat fish again, he says, in a nice callback to the events in King's Landing over this season. He calls Jace boy, and needs Hugh the Hammer to point out that Jace is actually Rhaenyra's son. Ulf is smart enough here to recognise that he's made a bit of a mistake. He tries to make up for it by appealing to the fact that all three of them have dragons and have Targaryen blood. This is the wrong way to placate Jace, who is obviously threatened by the dragon seeds and their Targaryen blood. And while Hugh may recognise that context, I don't think Ulf is smart enough to realise what he says. Jace clearly has Ulf correctly pegged as a peddler of nonsense, making it clear he won't tolerate any laziness or unreadiness from the new dragon riders. Later, Jace confides his worries to his cousin. Baela's response is both comforting and concerning, I think. Baela doesn't care about the dragon seeds or Jace's real parentage. He's not the first person whose aristocratic father is not actually his real father. What Jace has to do is prove he's worthy. While I think this is the most practical way to look at it, it does reduce him to being in a competition with the dragon seeds, a competition that's going to be based on their performance in the escalating war. So Rhaenyra's actions in having children who were clearly not her husband's children is making those children's lives harder and more dangerous. While she is rightfully concerned about the loyalty of the dragon seeds, she doesn't seem to see that she's made Jace's position more precarious. Rhaenyra is absent from both of the previous conversations because she's in Driftmark with Corlys. She confides in Corlys that she has worries about the loyalty of the dragon seeds, and Corlys assures him that in terms of Adam at least, she doesn't have to worry about that. Corlys reveals he's changed the name of his ship Sea Snake to the Queen Who Never Was, presumably in reference to his late wife Rhaenys. I guess we're supposed to draw a parallel here between Rhaenyra and Rhaenys, just a couple of letters difference between their names, just one letter's difference between the ship and the episode title. Are we supposed to see a parallel here between, on the one hand, Rhaenyra and Aegon II, and on the other, Rhaenys and Rhaenys' cousin Viserys? Is this meant to imply that both of these men were unsuitable for the throne, and that in both instances, giving it up to the women would have avoided all of this problem? Anyway, Rhaenyra is in Driftmark to talk about the escalation of the war. She's going to put her dragon riders into action. Corlys is going to join the blockade. We see a couple of quick shots of the Lannister and Hightower armies on the march towards Harrenhal. In Harrenhal, Daemon's army will start marching on King's Landing in 2 days, trying to get away from the castle before the Lannister army can catch them. Sir Alfred from the Black Council has arrived to see Daemon. They chat in front of the weirwood tree, where Alfred starts cooking up a little bit of treason. Rhaenyra has faltered, he says. If you declare yourself, your lords will follow you. What we need in this moment, he says, is a king. Simon Strong is watching from a distance, close enough to hear them. For Simon, this is a bridge too far. The elder statesman has been indulgent and sympathetic towards Damon during his psychological excavation over the course of Damon's visit, clearly aware that something's been happening and letting that run its course. But possible treason is over the line, and he arranges for a message to be sent to Dragonstone. And the message arrives on Dragonstone during the night, while Rhaenyra, Jace, and the Dragon Seeds are having dinner. Ulf is being graceless, which the others point out to him. The Maester arrives with Simon Strong's message, and Rhaenyra leaves, taking her away from the possible treachery at her dinner table to the possible treachery that Daemon is engaging in. She leaves on her dragon and takes Adam and Seasmoke with her. Back at Harrenhal, Daemon gets another visitor in the middle of the night. It's Alice Rivers sneaking into his room. She leaves and he follows her to the Godswood. Behind the weirwood, we see a figure with antlers whose feet clop like a horse's hooves. The figure disappears. Alice clearly has something planned for Daemon here. When you came here, you were a closed fist. You thought you could bend the world to your will. The earlier contempt that permeated Daemon's attitude towards Alice has gone. You do not scoff, she says. I am no longer inclined to. Alice is clearly happy and asks Daemon if he's ready to see what's given to him. Daemon touches the weirwood. Blood runs out of the tree and over his fingers. Then we get a cavalcade of images, many of which refer to the future we know from the Game of Thrones TV show and the Song of Ice and Fire books. We see a Targaryen-looking guy with a wine birthmark on his face and a raven with a third eye. This is presumably Brynden Rivers, who Bran Stark will eventually meet in a cave so he can learn to fly. We see a White Walker. The White Walker looks a lot like the actor they've got to play Brynden Rivers. Is that a clue to something that's going to happen in A Song of Ice and Fire? We see a dead dragon, dead men, shouts of battle. Somebody walks through a battlefield scattered with corpses and falls into the water. Then there's a comet, some dragon eggs. We see Daenerys Targaryen with 3 baby dragons. We see the Iron Throne. Daemon approaches it, but Rhaenyra is there. And then we hear what I think is Helaena Targaryen, which is a bit unexpected. She says, it's all a story and you're part of it. You know your part. You know what you must do. So a lot to unpack in that short sequence, I think. I wonder if connecting the Song of Ice and Fire to the Dance of the Dragons will turn out to be a good decision or not. I think it ties the franchise together a lot more and makes things a lot more coherent, so that's a positive, I guess. On the other hand, if we've only got 2 seasons so far and we're only getting 2 seasons more, and those 2 seasons are only going to be 8 episodes each, is it going to feel awkward and artificial to have so much in House of the Dragon that's only explicable if you've seen other parts of the franchise? I don't really want fantasy shows to feel like homework. I want fantasy shows to be made because I'm a fan of the genre, but I just worry that trying to appeal to fans by tying everything together in this way might go off the rails, might alienate more casual viewers. Later in the episode, Rhaenyra and Adam arrive at Harrenhal. Caraxes screams, greeting the other 2 dragons, and Syrax does a low sweep over the troops to scare them, which seems to be a thing that Targaryen riders can't resist doing. Syrax lands on a track leading upwards towards one of the gates of Harrenhal, and Simon Strong is waiting to greet Rhaenyra as she walks up towards the gate. As they walk through, they enter the Great Hall. Caraxes is perched on the broken roof, facing them as they walk in. This seems to be visually referencing Season 1, Episode 2, where Syrax and Caraxes were in similar positions on the gates of Dragonstone. Again, we've got a standoff. Daemon Targaryen is in possession of a castle with his intentions unclear. Rhaenyra arrives to straighten out the situation. On Dragonstone, it was Rhaenyra who walked up to Daemon, but here Rhaenyra stays in place and Daemon walks up to her. He talks to her about his vision in the weirwood and the Song of Ice and Fire. You sound like my father, Rhaenyra replies. She takes Daemon's hand. Leave me again at your peril. Despite their argument earlier in the season, there's clearly some affection between them. After a short scene in Driftmark, where the animosity between Alan and Corlys seems to be growing, we head back to Dragonstone, where we move into the final sequence of the season. Rhaenyra has an unexpected visitor, Alicent Hightower. Alicent offers to open the gates of King's Landing to Rhaenyra and the Black faction once Aemond and Vhagar have left and gone to the Riverlands. I don't really like this at all. I think it's preposterous that she would betray her family to this extent. Rhaenyra's obviously interested in this deal. The sticking point is Aegon II and what will happen to him. The price that she wants is Aegon's death, and a public death for all to see. A son for a son, Rhaenyra says. Alicent says she just wants a quiet life. We're supposed to believe that she's prepared to pay the price of a public death for her son to achieve that. As much as she might feel regret, as much as she might feel sidelined, like I say, this is just silly. We're treated to a montage of the war escalating. We see the dragon riders getting ready to go out for battle. We see Rhaena running through the Vale, the Hightower army and Daeron's blue and orange dragon. The Stark army is crossing the Twins. The Lannister army are in sight of Harrenhal. Tyland Lannister and the Triarchy fleets are sailing through a rainstorm. Alan and Corlys are on the sea. Otto Hightower, seen for the first time since I think episode 2, is in jail somewhere. And Larys and Aegon II have left King's Landing. But the final shots of the series are like the marketing shots for the series. We see Alicent in profile on the left hand of the screen. Then we see Rhaenyra in profile on the right hand of the screen. For all that's happened in the series, for all that the plot has moved on, the creators still want us to see Alicent and Rhaenyra as the two main characters. Doesn't work for me. It's not how things actually are in universe. So the season ends with everyone going to war, and that's it. Pretty much. It's definitely been a mixed season. A lot that I've liked. There's other stuff that's felt a bit wrong. I'll still be watching season 3. Thanks for watching.